Okay. I'm going to start our learning sponsors. And I'm going to include yesterday's as well as today's. Learning sponsors, A Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Garelick in memory of Malcolm Perlman and Philip Mann. And Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Henya Rivka Pro Rosna bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch. And in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Azna bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, L'zecha Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. The month of learning by Lydia and Abe Krause's many friends in honor of their 50th anniversary. Josh and Cal Sanborn in memory of his parents, Chana bat Aryeh Leib and Shmuel Aryeh ben Baruch. Jill and Perry Meltzer in memory of her father, Yaakov ben Yosef. A week of learning by the family of Esther Shepatovsky in memory of Esther Riva bat Betzalel. By Sid Paris in memory of his father, Chaim ben Aaron Kohen. By Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Charlie's wife and Sam's sister, Menucha Sarah bat Yechiel Michal, and in memory of Sam's mother and Charlie's mother-in-law, Zissel bat Yehoshua. By Leslie and Gail Kaplan in memory of his mother, Pesha bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi V'Tzipora. By Andrea and David Dolney in memory of her mother, Edeltzina bat Shimshon. We have a day of learning from Shabbos by Milton and Gail Miller in memory of his mother, Rivka bat Menachem Mendel. By Gail and Philip White in memory of her mother, Freda bat Moshe Yaakov Kohen. By Sandy and Sidney Goldschmidt in memory of their friend, Nissen Mayo, Nissen ben Yaakov Tzvi. And today by Jack and Sheila Prince in memory of his mother, Leah Elka bat Yisrael. Today is the 20th, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Today also by Chazan Michael and Miriam Schiffer in memory of his mother, Chaya Hedis bas Elimelech Ze'ev. And that is it. May Shemus have an Aliyah, Crank Rafia Velti Yeshua Shemat Aliyah, and the Chol B'nai Israel Good Gaben Shtia. Okay. All right. I am going to have us start today on the bottom of Yud Bet Amud Beis, 4 lines up from the bottom. Okay. I want to start there because I think make an easier transition into today's Gemara and to finish the discussion that's there on the top of today's Amud before we go into a number of new, what I'll call scenarios. Okay? Okay. We have been discussing about situations where does the woman who is the, I'll put in quotes, erva, is that, okay, or the tzara, okay, who is requiring ibum or chalitza, who is exempt, okay? And we had examined in some detail the model of grusha, right, that has shechazra v'niseit. That was what the Gemara was working on. Then we got to the question of a minor, a mi'un, right? Mi'un situation that she refuses. What's her status? What's her tzara status, right? So that was the last scenario, the last example that the Gemara was giving us to look at.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If the Yavum is exempt, the Yavam is exempt because she's an Ereva. Does that mean the co-wife also becomes an Ereva?
That's part of the whole question. That's part of the whole discussion. Do we say that since he can't do Yibum Chalitza with his Yibama, right? What about the Tzara? What about the co-wife?
Is she permanently like an Ereva?
Some would, the impression I'm getting is some would say yes, and some would say no.
Because it's saying later she falls to another Yavum.
Where we get more complicated. Okay? All right. So
it depends really how you learn it. Some would say you learn it that one is the erva, and the other, when you learn from a verse that she's potter, but not. I don't know that the Torah is necessarily really an erva as well.
right. Okay. So we're finishing up now our discussion.
But if they still ate it up, though, he still can never marry anyone. Once the police is done with one, he's still not allowed.
The brothers aren't permitted to marry. Okay? Right? Okay. So we're still now finishing up the Mianet situation. Okay? Amar Rav Safra. That's where I'm starting. 4 lines up from the bottom. What did Rav Safra say? He said, how do we know whether or not this girl is really considered a minor such that she can perform miyun? Okay, what's the criteria? All right. Well, we're going to see that's not exactly the point, right? Because the Gemara is raising the point. We had theoretically thought that if she was before 11 years and 1 day, she said one opinion, she cannot get pregnant. Between 11 years and 1 day and 12 years and 1 day, she could become pregnant, but could die as a result. Right? That's what we saw. That's what the Gemara told us. Then the Gemara throws us a curve by saying, well, what happens if she gives birth to children? Isn't that a clear sign that she's reached maturity, physical maturity, and she can no longer do miyun at that point? That's what the Gemara was suggesting. So now that's why we get to Marav Safra, who says, Banim, harehem kisimanim, that if she's able to give birth, that must be adequate proof that she has reached physical maturity. Okay?
Therefore, she can
no longer give miyun, exactly. So the Gemara picks up there. Ve'ita amre banim adife misimanim. And there are those who even say that producing progeny is better than her seeing the physical development, because that would be then a clear sign that she is capable of cannot give miyun. Let's put it that way, right? So the Gemara, yes, go ahead.
Who's looking for the sign?
We're going to get to that in just a moment. Okay, good question. Lamai nafkamina. So what's the difference? Says the Gemara. Dafilu l'Rebbe Yehuda. That even according to Rebbe Yehuda, da amar ad sheyarbe hashachor, who says that until there is a large amount of dark hair in the private area, okay? But banim, with regards to the fact that if she did give birth, modeh, he would then at least acknowledge that in that situation, she has reached physical maturity where she can no longer do miyun, even if she doesn't show very clear physical signs. Okay. Right? So now the Gemara on Yud Gimel says, Rav Zavid Amar, says Rav Zavid, Ein banim below simanim. Now you see why I wanted to go back. He's going to say, wait a second, Rabbi Yehuda. How can she give birth if you say that she's got to have had physical mature signs to be able to give birth? So the Gemara says, Steve, v'nivdok, maybe we need to examine her. Okay? In other words, I don't think the rabbis themselves did it. I think they, l'shem tzniut, that they had their wives or somebody examine her.
This examiner after childbirth?
Yeah,
Well, that seems to be part of the-
that could be. Why? Because the Gemara is going to tell us in the next statement, Zev, v'chayshinan shema nashru, because we're concerned lest those hairs fell away. You wouldn't see physical simanim, and therefore, how could you know whether or not she's permitted miyun or not? Right. But what happens? The Gemara says, "Ha nichalaman da'amar chosheshin." That's okay if we say there are those who might suspect that maybe their hair fell away, and therefore we don't know for sure. We have no physical proof as to her reaching maturity.
Except for the bouncing baby.
Well, what happens? We don't know. Now, says the Gemara, Afilu laman da'amar ein chosheshin, mishum tsar leida chayshinan. But even for those who say we don't rely on physical simanim, okay, maybe because she did give birth, Eric, right? What happens? Their hair fell away as a result of that, and therefore we say maybe we still need to suspect whether or not what her physical, does she have those physical signs? In other words, maybe the fact that this girl gave birth is an exception. It's out of the ordinary, okay? And therefore we can't rely on that.
She doesn't have any simanim,
Okay.
doesn't mean she's not a gadol.
Right, we don't know. So therefore, that's the whole issue.
There are
Okay.
some people, men and women, who never have hair on their body.
Right. Okay. All right. So so we've now gotten through to the point of the status of the girl who was a minor, whether she says miyun, what's the status of her tzara, things like that. We go on now to a new example, a new situation. Ketzad potrot tzarotehen v'chule. How is it that they exempt the co-wives? Menahani mili. What's the Torah basis for this? Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda da Amar Kra. Okay, we have a pasuk that says what? Litzror. Right? Namely, by use of the word litzror, HaTorah rifta sarot harbei. That by the language of litzror, we have the implication that it means multiple co-wives. Okay, so it could be a co-wife. It could be a co-wife of a co-wife. Quite a few, as we're going to see in another example. Okay, exactly. So what happens? All right. Rav Ashiyama says, Rav Ashi, you ask the question, Menahani Mili, what's my Torah basis? Rav Ashi is going to say, maybe I don't need a pasuk. Svarahi. It's logical, he says. Sarah, Maitama Asera. The co-wife, what would be the reason that we would consider her forbidden? Right? Debamakom erva kaima. Because we say that already, if that woman, the Yavama, is an erva, okay, we say she's forbidden, then certainly we might argue if she's forbidden, the co-wife is going to be forbidden. Sarat Sarah Nami b'makom erva kaima. The co-wife of a co-wife could also be forbidden. Why? Because we said litzror meant multiple co-wives. Okay, so we come back now to a new piece from our Mishnah. Ketzad imetu hein chuli. All right, what we said if they died or if they were refused or so on and so forth. Va'afilu kanas. Ulavasof Geresh asks in a question, even if he married her and afterwards divorced her, what's the situation then? Or minhu, we have conflict between a Braita and a Mishnah or between two Mishnahs. Here's our example, all right? And I almost went and got our board to put a diagram here, okay? So let's follow closely, because what I did is I made a diagram in my notes, and I'll base it on that. Shlosha achim, 3 brothers, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. Okay? Shnaya mehen, Nisuim Shnei Achayot. Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. Shimon and Levi married 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. Okay, and the 3rd brother, Yehuda, what did he do? Ve'echad nasui nachri. He married a separate woman. No, just a non-related. Non-related. She's not related. Okay, Chana, right? We said so. Rachel and Leah are married to Shimon. Right, they're sisters. They're married to Shimon and Levi. But Yehuda is married to, I don't know, Yocheved, whatever, okay, who's not related, okay? So our diagram would have 3 brothers connected. 2 of the brothers, the older 2, are married to 2 sisters. That's how I structure it. And the 3rd brother, the youngest brother, is married to a different woman, okay? Now, what happens? All right. Geresh echad mi ba'alei achayot ishto. Let's say it's the middle brother, Shimon, he divorces his wife, who's one of the sisters. Okay, and he's the one that dies. Okay, for some reason. Let's go on. Hanasui Nachrit, the 3rd brother who we said was Yehuda, right? Vikansa Hamigaresh, and he marries then the divorcee, takes her as the co-wife, as a second wife, Umate, and he dies. Okay, so that was Yehuda, 3rd guy in the row, he dies. Right? So now there are the following. Minimally, there's Yehuda's first wife and the co-wife who was the widow of Shimon, who he took in Yibum. Okay?
No. Jewish.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, he didn't take her in Yibum. She was divorced, so he just married her stuff. Right, he just married her stuff. Okay? All right, now, who's left? The first brother, Reuven, is left. Now, okay? Now, he's got to the question as follows. Okay? Is he, on the one hand, of the 2 wives of Yehuda, the 3rd brother, one was the divorcee of his brother Shimon, who was the sister of Reuven's wife. Okay? The other woman is Yehuda's wife, okay? Who has no relationship to his to his wife.
Her husband died.
Right, okay? Right, we're gonna get to that too. Okay? Okay, so everybody's with me so far, all right? So, Ishto umet hanesuin achrit v'kansa migaresh umet. Zohi she'amru. This is where the rabbis then say, when we say, she'im metu o nitgarshu, if they died or were divorced, sarot tehen mutarot. The co-wives are permitted. Okay? In other words, that, well, I'll call her for the moment, that first wife of Yehuda is certainly permitted to Ruvain. Okay? Tama de Geresh. The reason, because she was divorced. Va'achar kach kinas. And afterwards, Yehuda married her. Aval kines. But if Yehuda had married her, okay, va'achar kach giresh, and afterwards she was divorced. In other words, she was divorced from Yehuda instead of from Shimon, right? What happens? Lo, okay, she would not be permitted. Right? Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Says Rabbi Yirmiyah, Tavra. It's disjointed. The Mishnayos are broken up. Misha Shina Zo, Lo Shina Zo. That there's no difference from this one to this one.
One who learned this one
Didn't, in other words, the one who had taught one Mishnah didn't teach one Mishnah. The one who taught the other Mishnah did not teach the other Mishnah. Hai Tana Savar Mita Mapelet. Here's your time frame, Eric. Right? Here in this case, one of the Tana was of the opinion that Yibum starts at the death of Shimon. That's when the Yibum requirement begins. Vahai Tana, and the other Tana is of the opinion, Savar, Nisuin Harishonim Mapili. Okay, that the first earlier wedding, in other words, that the marriage of Shimon starts. And the other Tana felt that it was the death. Maybe it was the death of Yehuda. That's when it comes. Now, what happens? Rava Amar. Says Rava, Le'olam Chad Tanahu. Rava disagrees and says, no, I don't have to say that these Mishnayot were authored by two different Tanaim. I could even argue that there was a single Tana who said both views. V'zo ein sarich lomar zo katan. And he's teaching it in a manner where we say this, and we don't even have to say the following afterwards, because you could derive it from the earlier statement. Okay? In other words, certainly we say that the order had to be, right? Divorce and then marriage. Okay? In other words, second brother divorced her, third brother married her. And we would, and on that would, once we know that, we would automatically then be able logically to determine that the opposite, were it done in the opposite order, it's not possible. Okay? All right. New scenario. V'kol sheyichola lema'en. And all those who are able to refuse. So the Gemara says, hold on a second. Who is she? Remember, our question is, who is she giving the refusal to? Is this minor giving the refusal to the, let's call it her husband? Well, he's not dead yet, okay? All right, because then, no, because that's an important fact. Is she giving, right?
Talking about a case of Yabama, then.
Okay, or is she giving the refusal to the potential Yabam? Okay, that's our, right? So the Gemara says, Vatima ein hashta. v'tityabem. So let's go ahead and give refusal to that particular Yabam and let him do Yibum to a co-wife, right? Right? To a rival, a co-wife. Lema Messiah the Rabbi Yoshaya. This would then come to support the view of Rabbi Yoshaya. The Amar Rabbi Yoshaya, who says, Mima'enet the Ma'amaro, that a woman could refuse his Ma'amar, his betrothal, we'll call betrothal Ma'amar for the moment, rabbinic betrothal, okay, for the right? Ve'ena mima'enet lezikato. But she really can't refuse the issue of the family attachment. Okay? Right? No, says the Gemara. That's not the case. Sarat erva shani. In the situation of a co-wife of a erva situation, it's different. The Tani, Rami Bar Yecheskel, because Rabbi Bar Yecheskel teaches as follows: Mi'ana bebaal muteret la'aviv. If she gives refusal with regards to the husband, she is then, and remember, by doing so, that marriage, in quotes, is retroactively annulled. Okay, it's as if it never happened and she was never married. Therefore, muteret la'aviv. She would be permitted to that man's father. Okay. Me'ana biyabam, if however she does refusal to the yabam, okay, asura la'aviv, she is forbidden to his father. Okay. Now, why would that be the case? The case being because the yabam, okay, it already indicates there was some level of zikah there. And therefore, with that level of zikah, okay, the father cannot marry Eshet Bano in that situation. All right? Alma, therefore, Misha'at Nefila Nir'et Kikalato. Because from the moment, I'm going to say, that she became into the status of a Yevama, she was already looked upon in general by the popular, all right, in common, as is she, that's the daughter-in-law, all right, and that's not permitted. Hachanami, here too, Misha'at Nefila, Nir'et Kitsarat Bito. Here too, okay, she would be looked upon as the co-wife, as if the co-wife of the daughter. Okay, in other words, she would be looked upon as an erva and therefore not permitted. Okay, we think that Gemara is hard? Matnitin. Let's go to a new Mishnah. All right? Remember we said that our Mishnah started off by saying there were 15, maybe 16. But we know if we count them up in the Torah, we get 21. Okay? So what about the others? That's what the Mishnah is going to deal with.
No.
What? Sheish arayot chamorot me'elu. There are 6 examples, I'm going to say, of erva, of arayot, that are more stringent than those we discussed in the first Mishnah. Mipnei shenisuot, and I'm going to read into the word Mishnah the word rak, only la'acherim. They're only permitted to be married to others and not to any of the brothers. Okay? Sarotehen mutarot. But in this case, on the one hand, there's a stringency. On the other hand, there's a leniency. That the co-wives in these situations could marry one of the brothers. Right? Whether you'd want to is another issue. Imo, his mother, ve'eshet aviv, right? The wife of his father. Okay, and remember we said that doesn't necessarily mean from the earlier Mishnah. Isn't it the same as mother? No, it's not the same. It could be a second marriage. Labriut. Okay. Va'achot aviv, the sister of his father. Achoto me aviv, his sister through his father. Okay, in other words, his paternal sister. Right. Ve'eshet achi aviv, the wife of his paternal brother. Ve'eshet achiv me aviv, and the wife of his paternal half brother. Okay. Right. So there's Imo is 1, Eshet Aviv is 2, Achot Aviv is 3, Achoto Me Aviv is 4, Eshet Achi Aviv, the wife of the brother of his father, that's his aunt, right, is 5, Ve'eshet Achiv Me Aviv, and the wife of his brother through his father, right, that's his wife of paternal half brother, that's number 6. Okay. Now what happens? Beit Shammai matirin hatzarot la'achim. Beit Shammai permits the co-wives to the brothers, who Beit Hillel osrim, and Beit Hillel forbids them. Okay, let's go on now. Chaltzu. Let's say they went ahead and did chalitza. Beit Shammai poslin min hakuhuna. Beit Shammai says they are ineligible then after the chalitza for kahuna because it's a valid chalitza. Beit Hillel machshirin, and Beit Hillel permits it. Nit yabmu. Let's say they performed yibum. Beit Shammai machshirin. Beit Shammai permits it. Beit Hillel poslin, and Beit Hillel says it's not tofsin. The marriage does not come permitted. Afal pi. Now here's the key. Excuse me. Afal pi she'elu osrim ve'elu matirin. Even though these forbid and these permit, elu poslin ve'elu machshirin, and these nullify and these say they're suitable or fit. Lo nimna'u Beit Shammai milisei nashim Beit Hillel. This did not prevent the women, I'm going to say, from associated with the house of Shammai, or men from Shammai, marrying women from Beit Hillel. Lo Beit Hillel mi Beit Shammai, nor did it permit, okay, men from Beit Hillel marrying women associated with Beit Shammai. Okay. Now we get a further clarification, right, of something else. Kol hataharot v'hatmeot shahayu elu mitaharim ve'elu mitamim. All those objects, all right, could be people too, but I was thinking more of objects, okay, where one group would say it's tahor, and another group would say it's right, and another group would say it's tameh, or vice versa. Okay. Lo nimna'u osin taharot elu al gabe elu. It did not prevent them from loaning utensils one to another. Okay. They would borrow utensils from Beit Hillel. Beit Hillel would borrow utensils from Beit Shammai. Okay. All right. Now, what would be our greatest concern here is we're going to say, if we have certain definitions of marriage and Tuma and Tara according to the Beit Hillel school, and if we have certain marriages and Tuma and Tara according to Beit Shammai, does that seem that we're dividing the Jewish people into separate groups. Okay, and don't we have a pasuk that says, all right, lo titko to do, right? Don't make cuts, which we understand to mean don't break up into separate groups. Now we go back into the Gemara. Okay. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi says, right, the following. My Tama de Beit Shammai. What's the reasoning of Beit Shammai in regards to marriages? Right? Dichtiv, because there's a pasuk that says, Lo tia eshet hamet hachutza leish zar, that it should not be the wife of the deceased going outside to a foreign or strange another person. Okay? Chutza, outside, miklau deika pnimit. From there, we learn that there are those that are inside. In other words, within. All right? Va'amar Rachmana lo tiyeh. And the Torah says that should not be. In other words, one's existing situation is such that they should marry still within. In other words, within the Zika. I'm explaining it. Within the family bond. Okay? Ubeit Hillel, mibayilaho l'kediktiv Rabbi Yehuda Marav. But Beit Hillel needs this pasuk for another purpose. Namely, it needs it according to what was said by Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, the following. Minayin she'ein kiddushin tofsin b'yabama. Under what circumstances is it that a marriage is not considered legal? Let's put it that way. With one's widowed sister-in-law, Shene Amar, Lo tia eshet hamet hachutza leish zar. You should not have the wife of the deceased go outside to a strange person. Lo tia ba havaya lazar. She should not be in that existing situation for the strange person. Ubeit Shammai says, Mikativ lachutz, is it written to go out? Chutza kativ, towards the outside. I'm translating it as written. Ubeit Hillel, kevan dechativ chutza, and Beit Hillel says, since it's written towards the outside, keman dechtiv lachutz dami. It's as if it's written to the outside. Right? The Tanya Rabbi Nehemiah, Omer, as was taught by Rabbi Nehemiah, Kol teva shetzricha lamed b'tchila. Any word where we see the lamed at the beginning to tell me it means to, okay? Hitil lahakatu, the text of the Torah structures it, hey b'sofa, with a hey at the end. For example, the following. V'tana debei Rabbi Yishmael, as was taught in the Academy of Rabbi Yishmael, Kagon Elim, Elima, Machanayim, Machanaima, Mitzrayim, Mitzrayima, Dilibatema, Yerushalayima, Midbara. So we see all these examples where the phrase has the hey in biblical language, meaning the location towards or outward, okay? And they're saying that that's the same as, okay, right, to someplace. So chutza then would be la chutz according to Beis Hillel, right? Okay. Ubeit Shammai, And as far as Beit Shammai goes, the Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Minalaho. This statement of Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, what do they do with it? Right? Mila ish zar nafka. They learn it from the phrase to a strange man. That's where they derive it. Who Beit Hillel says and as far as Beit Hillel goes, Nami tepok laho mila ish zar. Let them also learn it and derive it from the phrase ish zar. Ein hachinami, says the Gemara. Indeed, that's the case. If that's the case, if they learn it from that same phrase, chutza lamali, why then did we say that they learn it from chutza? What do we need that word for? The rabo ta'arusa. It comes to include a woman who is engaged and not just married. Okay. Ve'idach, and the other, namely Beit Shammai, mechutza hachutza. All right, from the outside to the outside. Ve'idach, okay, and the other Beit Hillel, chutza hachutza lo mashma laho. The difference between chutza and hachutza, they don't learn. They don't darshan it. Okay. Let's go back now. Rabba Amar, says Rabba the following. Ta'amayhu de Beit Shammai. The reasoning of Beit Shammai is as follows, according to Rabba. The ein isur chal al isur. That we don't say that one prohibition follows on top of another prohibition. Right? What do we mean by this case? Teina chacha. Okay, here we can say it's appropriate. The nasa, person married, mate, and then died. V'achar kach nasa, and then was married. Chai, and then a living person married. Lo ate isur achot isha. We do not have the prohibition of the sister of a wife. V'chayil isur eshet ach, and then that also falls on top of the prohibition of the wife of a brother. Ella, but rather nasachai, where the living one married, v'achar kach nasa mate, and afterwards he married the widow of the deceased brother, achot isha kadim. There, in that case, the wife of the sister of the wife comes first. And therefore, kevan delo ate isur eshet ach, v'chayal al isur achot isha, havyalat sara erva. Since we're saying that in this case, that the prohibition of eshet ach, of wife of a brother, and then on top of that falls the prohibition of the sister of a wife, havyalat sarat arva, we have in a situation of a co-wife of an erva, shelo b'makom mitzvah, and not in a situation of the requirement of the mitzvah of yibum or chalitza, v'sharia, and then that co-wife would be permitted. Okay, in that kind of a case. Okay. Another example. Chaltzu Beit Shammai poslim. Our Breita or our Mishnah said that when our Mishnah said that when they did chalitza, right, then Beit Shammai would nullify it. Pshita, that's obvious, right? Right, saying, of course, chalitza, we said earlier all along, it's similar to being in the situation of a grusha, and the same way a kohen is not permitted to a grusha, he's not permitted to a chalutza. Okay, However, says the Gemara, la'afuke de Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The reason our Mishnah had to state this was to show and to exclude the view of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. The Amar, who said, Bo'u v'nitaken lahem l'tzarot, sheyu choltzot v'lo mityabamot. Let us come and make a takana, okay, that says that the co-wives should have chalitza and not yibum. Kamash Malan comes to teach us the Beit Hillel machshirin, that Beit Hillel then does permit them, does say they're suitable. Again, new piece. Nityabmu from our Mishnah, Beit Hillel, poslin chule, that if they did yibum, Beit Hillel said they are pasul, not nullified, no good. Ha, to lamali, this more. Why did we need it? Aide de Tana Chaltzo, Tana Nami Nityabmu. Since they already taught the example of Chalitza, they also taught the example of the question here of Yibum. Snan Hatam. Okay? But it's taught elsewhere the following. Okay? Megillah Nikret Be'echad Asar. Okay, we just had Purim, right? That the Megillah is read on the 11th of Adar. Ubishneim Asar on the 12th of Adar. Ubishlosha Asar on the 13th of Adar. Uba'aba Asar or on the 14th of Adar. Ubechamisha Asar or on the 15th of Adar. Okay, implying any one of those days we might have thought were valid occasions by which the Megillah could be read. Velo pachot, lo yoter, no less and no more. Okay. Amar le Reish Lakish le Rabbi Yochanan. And so Reish Lakish says to the Rabbi Yochanan, Akri kan, I would read in the Torah here the phrase lo titgodadu. It says you can't break up into different groups. Aren't you saying then that you can read this day, this day, this day, this day? Aren't you making different groups? Says Reish Lakish, probably when he first started learning. Okay? Lo ta'asu agudot agudot. We understand that pasuk to mean you can't make different groups. Okay. So the Gemara now perhaps is bringing us Rabbi Yochanan's answer. Hi, lo titgodadu, mibayale legufe. This pasuk, lo titgodadu, is necessary for itself, for its own basic pshat meaning, the Amar Rachmana, because the Torah says, lo ta'asu chavura al meit, that you do not cut yourself, okay, on the occasion of a death, right? Imkain, lemakra, if that's the case, Reish Lakish could argue, right? Let the verse say, lo tagodru, don't do it that way, don't cut. My titgodadu, why then does it say titgodadu? Shmami, now we learn from this, lahachi huda'ata, is this why it comes? Ve'ema kule lahachi huda'ata. I might therefore say, for all of it, in other words, for both explanations, the pshat explanation of not cutting on the deceased,
And also
and the expounding, the drasha explanation, right, that it's also to tell us you don't break into groups, subgroups, okay? Lahachi udata. Im kain, maybe Reish Lakish responds back, lemakra lo tagodu. Let the verse simply say lo tagodu. My lotet go to do. Why then does it come to say lotet go to do? Shmami natarte. We learned from that both explanations. Okay? All right, going on then. Amarle. Okay, back now to our more basic discussion. Okay, Ad kan lo shanita makom shenahagula asot malacha. Okay, now we're jumping ahead to Pesach. Up to this point, remember when you learned this, we said that there were places that had the minhag not to work Erev Pesach. There were other places that had the minhag to work Erev Pesach. Maybe, what are you going to give me with that explanation? Okay, of lotus go to do, right? So he says, Ad kan lo shanita, up to now, you didn't teach there's a place shenahagula sod melacha ba'arvei psachim, that they had their practice was, okay, to do work on Erev Pesach, ad chatzot, until noon. Osin, they do. In other words, they go ahead and do work. Makom shenahagu shelo la'asot, a place where they did not do work. Ein osin, they don't work.
They should not work.
In other words, they shouldn't be
When they
working
know
there.
not to work,
They shouldn't be working there. Again, Rabbi Yochanan's response. Amarle, Amina lach ana isura. Okay, I was telling you, okay, about something where it's forbidden. The Amar Rav Shemen Bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the Kayem et Yemei Hapurim Bizmanehem, that one has to fulfill the days, plural, of Purim in their appropriate times. Zmanim harbe tiknu lehem chachamim. Many times, or multiple times, was what the sages established. Okay, va'at amart li minhaga, and you want to ask me a question about custom as opposed to isur, right? Vahatam,
there's a smack from a pasuk.
right?
What about Erev Pesach? There's no.
No pasuk. Vahatam, and there, lav isura havya. In regards to there, our example of Pesach, we said it was the minhag of that
There's no
place.
issue to do work on Erev
Of
Pesach.
Pesach, right? Vahatnan, but aren't we taught as follows? Balayla Beit Shammai Osrim, Ubeit Hillel Matirin. At night, Beit Shammai prohibited and Beit Hillel permitted. Amar le, he said to him, Hatam Haro'eh Omer. Okay, there was a question we said of seeing work being done. Melachahu delitle. That's where we said the work was not done. Vaha Beit Shammai, but here with Beit Shammai, matirin hatzarot la'achim u Beit Hillel osrim. But here we said that Beit Shammai permitted the co-wives to the brothers, whereas Beit Hillel forbade them. And I'm going to stop here because tomorrow's goes into a long discussion and to try to clarify that. Okay, and we would be here till 10 o'clock, by the way, this morning. All right, so we'll pick that up tomorrow. But I want us to see again, they tried again to raise this question of lotus go to do with one or two examples. Okay, it's been put aside, but still we come back now to our original concern of the difference in regarding the marriages, the attitude or the permissibility or non-permissibility in that situation. Okay, everybody have a good day.
Oh, man.
All right.